John Lehsou was born in Germany in 1840, and then he immigrated to the United States in 1865 to join another group of Germans that were in Iowa. And they had settled in Iowa. This whole large group of Germans, they had lost a revolution in northern Germany and had moved to Iowa in the early 1840s. So he left Germany because Bismarck was mustering an army to start some more wars over there in Europe. And so he came to the States and he went to Iowa, to join all those countrymen that were already in Iowa. So anyway, he works his way across Iowa and he gets to the west side of Iowa, and that is that was the head of the Overland Trail. And the Overland Trail was a wagon road that came all the way across through to Idaho and joined the California Trail, you see. So it was already a major transcontinental travel route. And so John Owen met him at the head of the Overland Trail. See. So John Owen was a guy who had Fort Owen down there in the Bitterroot Valley, right? And so he had gone back east to buy a bunch of supplies he was going to sell to the gold miners out here, but he needed teamsters to carry the wagons down the Overland Trail to Fort Owen. See, so he hired John Lehsou and a bunch of others to drive the wagon train across the Overland Trail, and that was in 1865, 1866. And so they got to Fort Laramie, Wyoming, and then they took the Bozeman Cutoff, you see, which is basically where I-25 is today. So if you took the Bozeman Cutoff, it cut 400 miles off the trip to here, see, as opposed to going across through Idaho and then coming north, see. So, but the problem was the Bozeman Cutoff ran right through the best hunting grounds of the Sioux Indians, and it's also where Custer's last stand happened about 30 years later, you see. So they were very possessive of that piece of country. They didn't want the Europeans to be trespassing there and setting up, land and so forth. So they weren't really supposed to go on the Bozeman Trail, but they did, and they got, in fact, attacked by the Sioux, and 3 of the men were killed, and the Sioux took all of their horses, and so, but they still made it all the way to the survivors made it all the way over here to Fort Owen with all the supplies. So Owen hired him to work for him down there at the Fort Owen, which is down in Stevensville. And then he was doing that, and then he decided, well, he started his own trading company. See, so then he went down the Mullen Trail, which was basically follows the route of I-90 today, about 40 miles east of here, and he built a trading post right there, right at the mouth of Bear Gulch. And it just happened that a gold rush was going on in Bear Gulch, you see. And so all the miners that were going up Bear Gulch had to buy supplies that were coming in on the Mullen Trail, see. And so it was a pretty good business venture for him to build this trading post right there on. Over time, that trading post fell down, and it was just kind of being grown over with weeds and all. And these 2 people, I can't think of their name. Let's see, Ekstroms, saw this pile of logs and saw hope in it, and they moved it to Rock Creek and they rebuilt it as Ekstrom's stage station. But that was originally built by this guy over there. So they moved it in the 1950s over to where it is today, and you can still go there, still see it, and get a sense for what that was like. Half of it was for the horses and the hay, and the other half was for the people, you see. So anyway, he's there at his trading post, and another German countryman comes down from Beartown, and they make friends, and this guy's name is Kroger, and he says, let's be partners. And so he goes up to become a gold miner with Kroger. See? And so they mine for gold for 20 years up in Beartown. And then suddenly Lehsou shows up in town here, he's incredibly rich. And he bought all the land we're standing on, from here all the way to the interstate and all the way to Grant Creek. He owned all this land, and he was planting fruit trees in here, and he had all the water rights to Grant Creek, which was a really important thing. And then, meanwhile, his partner Kroger went down to Phillipsburg and started a brewery down there, which was very successful. And when Kroger died, I saw his obituary. He was worth what would be about $2 million in today's money. So Lehsou was here, and he bought this land, and then he still had enough money to invest. He became the major investor in the main bank downtown, which was on the corner of Higgins and Broadway. And he became the vice president of that bank, you see. So suddenly he's got all this money. See, so I'm a geology professor, and I decided I was go up there and find out, where was his gold mine? I felt like he couldn't really account for all that money with the operations that people had found so far up there. Maybe he had left some gold mines, which I never found it. But finally, I decided that what happened was that he, correct me if I'm wrong, John, okay? I think what he did was that he sold his patented claim to some investors from back east, and that's where they got their money. And then they took that money here, and then they bought the property, and then I think that's what happened. So anyway, he raised his wife here, Dora. So it turns out it was almost like a pipeline from northern Germany to Iowa to Missoula, or to Montana. See, so another one of these people from the same town was Conrad Course, who bought the big ranch there in Deer Lodge, and he was sort of the cattle king of Montana back there in the 1860s, and he had been a butcher and was raising cattle and selling them to the miners down in the gold towns in southwest Montana, Bannock and Virginia City. See, the miners didn't have time to raise any of their own food, so they had to buy all the meat, and they had to buy all the grain and everything from people that were raising stuff. So anyway, so they went to Deer Lodge from Beartown, and Lehsou and his partner Kroger met Dora and Dora's sister, and so who were also both from the same town back in Germany. And then he married Dora, and Kroger married Dora's sister. And then they had these 3 children. His daughter died of, for some reason the daughter is, the tombstone says Dora, but the daughter is here. And Dora's over there where it says mother. So, anyway, she died of a fever when she was only 18 years old, when they were living right here on this property. So they actually sold this whole piece of cemetery to the city for $1. That part of the cemetery already belonged to the city. I think maybe Higgins and Warden maybe had given that part of the cemetery to the city, but then they gave this part of the cemetery to the city. So they're actually buried on their property. But one of the things I found really interesting, so I was learning all about this guy, you see, because I figured that was going to lead me to his lost gold mine, right? But I was out here and I was going to get a picture of the tombstone, and then I saw those 3 stones over there. And so if you walk over here, can anybody guess why these 3 stones are identical to each other? There aren't really other stones like this that I've found in the cemetery.
Triplets comes to mind.
So it turns out these were his partners. They died as bachelors, and he cared a whole lot for his partners. And he had, in fact, he had even allowed Donlin to live on one of their patented claims, which is actually where that new rest area is on Interstate 90, going east of here. And so they died as bachelors. They didn't have any family. They had all immigrated from Europe, and so the rest of their family was still back in Europe. And it happened that they were all members of the International Order of Oddfellows, including Lehsou and Kroger, and also I think Conrad Course. And so all these Germans had, the fraternity. It was really like a business organization, or a social business kind of a thing. There still is a lodge, IOOF lodges downtown in Missoula. Anyway, so if you were in the lodge and you died, then they took care of the last rites for you. And so the IOOF provided the tombstones, but Lehsou provided the plots. So those guys were hard-working gold miners. When they died, they didn't have anything left. And Lehsou died, he was actually a very wealthy man, but most gold miners died broke. So, you're welcome.
Thank you.